a lot of people who have considered buying a house, and some people, it has been discussed how much money real estate agents can make on one transaction. And certainly some agents, there's no doubt, deserve it. There are certainly real estate agents who do everything top to bottom and earn that money. On the flip side, sometimes there are these do-it-yourself people who want to do a lot of the legwork on their own and don't always feel like they have another option other than maybe paying a full commission to a real estate agent. Louis Herrera joins us, CEO and designated broker of RT Brokerage Services, which actually allows people for this to choose this consumer choice for full service representation or just this kind of pay-as-you-go option, which is certainly different than what we hear from, most professionals in your industry.
True, yeah.
Well, first, welcome.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about how you kind of came up with this model and, versus maybe the other models.
Well, part of it was looking at the way that the industry is changing. Real estate data is now available on the web everywhere, so consumers can, what used to be an agent-centric focus, meaning that you only got information from the real estate agent when you were looking for a house. Now it's available entirely on the web, so it's a consumer-centric focus. And so looking at that, consumers still want full service, right? They want to be able, they don't know everything about the transaction because most people don't buy a house once a year, right?
Half the agents out there don't know everything about the transaction.
Well,
that's a whole other topic.
That's another topic, but
actually they're gone now.
Yeah, a lot of them are gone. But really, so how do you leverage your commitment to buy or sell? If you're 99.9% sure you're going to buy or sell, I think it's in your best interest to go hourly, as opposed to paying a traditional market rate commission. For example, you'll run into lots of people who will say, I live on the same street, I love the neighborhood, and I just need a bigger house. And they'll see a house across the street that goes for sale, and they've been in the house, they actually know the owners, and they want to buy that house. So what are their options, right? They can engage an agent, or they can go with a discount broker. And somewhere in between, there's a middle route, right? And so that's where I came up with the hourly rate program.
And so what is an hourly rate? I mean, what do you pay for exactly?
So what you pay for is just the steps of, basically it's full service, and you pay for all of the work that's involved.
I mean, are you driving these people around, or is this not, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I mean, are you going to drive these people around, or they're going to pay you per hour for driving them around?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me step back. So the way that it works is a consumer comes to me, and a person who wants to buy or sell a house, and they say, hey, I want to buy a house. I want to learn more about your model. So there's the traditional commission-based model where an agent collects a commission if the sale closes. And the other model is you can eliminate my risk, meaning that I'll get paid for sure if I work with you, and I'll charge you hourly rates. And they're tiered hourly rates. So there's a rate for things that I need my license. There's a rate for tours. There's a rate for transaction management, meaning working with your lender or escrow. And then there's an administrative rate. So the way that works is based on our conversation, I will put together a scope of work that says, based on our conversation, I think it's going to take 25 or 26 hours. Here's a scope of work. And I give them the choice. So here's the traditional route. Here's how much it would cost. And here's the hourly rate model. And you just decide which one you want. So as we go through, I basically bill them for the services that I outlined in our proposal if they go hourly. And
this works for the more educated home buyer or home seller. Or do you think it is equal?
I think it's equal. Who it works for are online consumers who know the inventory very well. So I've taken out first-time home buyers, and they're obsessed with knowing what's coming out on the marketplace. They have their iPhone, and they're like, bing, hey, there's a new listing. And they'll call me oftentimes and say, did you see that new listing? And I'm not watching the market 24/7. In terms of what listing comes up every second. And they'll actually know the inventory as well. I wouldn't say better, but they'll know it pretty as well as I do.
Well, they could. You can sign up on so many searches. You could certainly notice it before you did.
Yeah, and they do. And so they'll call me and say, hey, this is here. So it really works for people who know the marketplace, have been searching extensively on their own, and want to leverage the amount of work that they want to put into that transaction by reducing the commission charge.
So it kind of allows them to do a little bit of maybe the legwork. Maybe they're not as leaning. They don't lean as hard on you.
Right. So the biggest part of buying a house really is in search. I mean, that most people will say, okay, I've narrowed it down to 1 or 2 neighborhoods, and this is the style of house that I want. And you can see a picture on the web, and it looks great. And you go see it, and you know what? The pictures were great. They had a great photographer, but it doesn't really look like that in person, right? And so that's a big part of the time that an agent spends working with a client. Because once you actually enter into a purchase and sale agreement, I'd say that it's less than 10 hours of work unless there's a major snafu somewhere in the process.
And so, is this what consumers think they're paying for, or do they really know what they're paying for, or even how they're paying?
In the traditional,
in the traditional way, you're taking this hourly approach. But when somebody goes a traditional way, the seller's really paying that.
True, the seller is paying the commissions, but the buyer is also paying as well because they pay the purchase price. The buyer does not get a credit at the end of the transaction that says, here's a credit for your agent's representation. The buyer is in effect paying. Yes, it comes off the seller's proceeds on the HUD statement, but the buyer really pays.
It's somewhat absorbed in the purchase price, really.
It is absorbed in the purchase price.
Now, on the flip side, let's say somebody decides not to buy a house. I think you alluded to at the beginning and even before we came on, one of the biggest things is this is really built to save somebody money who is going to buy a house.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that.
So real estate commissions are essentially a risk premium, right? The risk is that an agent will work with you in the hopes that they will get paid. A lot of times they don't get paid. So, and the premium is the market rate commission. The hourly model is such that if you know you're going to buy, you're 99.9% sure you're going to buy, you can eliminate the agent's risk by paying them hourly. And it's pay as you go. So you have to be 99.9% sure you're going to buy. Otherwise, you've paid for hourly services and ended up with nothing. And I've actually had consumers who want an objective perspective and actually are happy to pay me an hourly. Grant, we don't go 50 hours into a transaction, but they're willing to spend the money to get a purely objective perspective on whether or not they should buy or sell.
So it sounds like you also do a little bit of maybe consulting. We were talking to Jim Estrada just a few minutes ago, about, bringing somebody in as a consultant, like an inspector on potentially a remodel job. Is this something where you could come in as a consultant paid hourly on a real estate transaction? Yeah.
So I had a client who was interested in buying a new house. They couldn't decide whether or not they should remodel their house. And so we went out and looked at the marketplace, and they really wanted somebody who wasn't going to pressure them to buy, right? And they wanted to feel like the compensation was fair, so they elected for the hourly model. And ultimately, they did not buy it, and they remodeled their house extensively, and they're very happy.
It seems like it would be a better way to go than having hiring 6 real estate agents to come out and tell you what your house would be worth either way.
Right.
So do you, again, we are here with Luis Herrera. Luis, we have about a couple minutes before we have to go to break. When you're working with somebody on this consultant basis, what are some of the biggest questions you're getting asked?
Really, it's all about price, right? And the value of the house. Is this a good buy, right? And so they really want an objective opinion where they know that I'm going to give them sort of a straight up answer about whether or not they should buy or sell this house. And I always tell them, look, if I think you should buy this house, I'm telling you because I think you should. I have an incentive to tell, if I'm going hourly, to tell you not to buy the house because I want to show you 10 others, right? So if I tell you to buy it, then I actually do mean you really should buy it.
And on the flip side, if somebody is, versus the traditional, which, they have a very vested interest in trying to get you to buy it. I think that's an interesting, it brings up an interesting point, and we've hit on this a lot the last few days even, is the professionalism of anybody in any profession. To think that you would get pushed into something because of a commission that is not in someone's best interest, I think that's always a fear.
Yeah.
In your model and allowing a consumer or a home buyer to choose not to do that, you do alleviate that risk, which is something that, it's a model that does something different than most people think.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, Louis, thanks so much for joining us. When we come back, Heather Moore is going to join us. And, certainly people are looking for new things to do in this economy and new ways to do it. Heather's going to ask us some fun questions all about that. My name is Ben Brashen. That was Louis Herrera. You're listening to Brashenomics.